One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse, such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. I'm honored to introduce today's guest, Julie Barth. Julie is here to share her powerful story, one marked by loss, abuse, and the kind of resilience that only presents itself when it becomes your only option. Through her healing journey, Julie discovered a deeper purpose: to help those who are walking a similar path. So instead of me telling you everything, I'm going to let Julie speak for herself. Here she is. Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Ingrid. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm very appreciative of your time and your topic. So before we jump into all that, do you mind just giving a brief background, or maybe not so brief? You have quite a bit to talk about of, what brought you here.
Sure. So I am the mother of six, and I opened up a charity a couple of years ago to help women in crisis. I have had a pretty long history as far as my adult life has pretty much been um, full of caregiving, and I have a special needs daughter. I lost my first husband, who was like my best friend growing up, to pancreatic cancer when we had four very small children. So I know all the complexities of caregiving while also trying to be a parent. And then after I got, past that, he passed. He actually ended up living 16 months, which was a blessing in some ways. They told him he would have 2 weeks to live. So yeah, so we were able to get him for a lot longer than that. But I think anyone who's a caregiver knows that, you hate even say that some of it was a curse. But there were some hard fought months at the end there. So after getting out of that, after he passed, I kind of just wanted to put it behind me. I had a special needs daughter that I fought for 4 years, just trying to get her, to be at a point where we knew she was going to make it, and all of, the surgeries that came with that, and finding out about her genetics. And so it was really just a decade of, fire drills and bouncing from one thing to the next. And I kind of, when he passed away, I just wanted to like move, be gone, not think about it. And while everyone else was just starting to grieve, I think I was like, every day was a grieving process of losing him just a little bit more. So, I think that I kind of just picked up and I left my family behind, and I met somebody who I married. And that was, I think, really just a reaction to trying to not acknowledge the first situation in decade. I just wanted to run away from it. But I quickly found out that people always say, like, you can't run from your problems. And it sounds very cliche, but it's true. So, yeah, that's kind of just a little synopsis. There's a lot of ups and downs in the first 10 years. And following that, which is my second book is focused on, is I was in an extremely emotionally abusive relationship. And I never would have thought that I would have been where I'm at. I fought to get my first husband to help him be here. And my special needs daughter, I was always in the ring trying to make her better and fighting and just being so involved. And then I went from that straight to this person that I didn't even recognize. So it was like Julie had left the building. I found myself doing really stupid, silly things, crying, and just things that were very uncharacteristic of myself. So I think that's why, my life and my goals now are committed to helping women in different, financial situations, different emotional states, different fire drills that they find themselves in life, whether it's being the mom to a special needs daughter who couldn't get vaccines because we couldn't afford them, or, caring for a loved one when you have four other kids. Our charity is based on trying to get women to a position where they don't have to lose everything the way it's structured now. You have to like be so, and it's kind of sad because you're like, oh, I'm in poverty. That's amazing. And you're like, wait a second, I'm in poverty. So yeah, we're trying to catch them before they get to that point, because you shouldn't have to give everything away before someone's like, oh, now you have nothing will help. We just don't think that's a fruitful way to go about charities and really boost people when they need you most.
I think that when you help people when they've hit bottom, it becomes more of a almost like they're dependent now. They've lost their independence, and it's harder to then create a life beyond that. Pancreatic cancer is terrible. I'm very sorry that you went through that. I'm a medical provider, so I know that it's very difficult for caregivers, and it's you're appreciative of that time, but then that time also kind of draws out the pain that you see your loved one go through, and I know that's a difficult process. It leaves you almost in a state of vulnerability and more, um, I guess, exposed to somebody that can take advantage of somebody in that kind of a situation. And it's happens quite a bit that people then end up in relationships with an individual who ends up being abusive. How long were you guys married?
It was a long decade. I can honestly say, we lived together for about 6 years until, it was like unbearable. And he started traveling for work. So I was blessed in the fact that he wasn't around. I had two small children with him, and then I had four from my first marriage. Everyone always says, "Why did you stay so long?" And I think that anybody going through it knows you're staying for a reason, but you're not quite sure what that reason is. Um, you know, Unfortunately, the only way to survive these relationships is to get out of them. But from the outside, where it looks so clear, like you should leave, you're in danger. Internally, when you're a caregiver and a mom and you have all these like, issues from whatever baggage you've been through, usually attachment disorders, people like emotionally abusive people, they can pick out that person that is bleeding who is just wants everyone to be happy, the pleaser. They're very good at finding the pleaser. They're very good at finding someone who is broken in some ways and just wants somebody there to support them. And unfortunately, you end up losing everything that you have in these relationships and you can't see it. So it's so clear on the outside, you know it, but taking that step just seems like you're going to, lose everything. And so you stay stuck in it.
Yeah, and I think it's especially more difficult when you have children involved, especially if that individual is their father, and he was for two of them. And it's an insidious kind of thing that happens. It's not like he just comes in with abuse, right?
Yeah. Mm-mm. I can honestly say there was something about him because everyone is always asking me, what are red flags? But I think what I've come to learn most about the best advice that I can give to people is I don't need to tell them these red flags. Like, you know them. If you're Googling it, if you're searching, if you're like, all the time on computer trying to figure out what's going on in my relationship, what's wrong, your brain is saying there's something not right about this relationship or you wouldn't be looking. I think taking that one step of getting out of it, that's the complexity in it. Because if you do that, you feel like you're going to lose everything. You're probably tied to them financially, you're tied to them economically, and you've done some pretty stupid stuff. They get you to react so that you do really stupid, crazy things, and then they're like, "See, you're crazy." And you can't disagree with them because the things that I was doing, like chasing and crying and telling him to get out, then begging him to come back, those were all very crazy things, whatever crazy looks like. But again, there's they keep telling you you're the problem. You are doing things that make yourself the problem. So if you expose somebody and say, "I want to get out of this," you also have to kind of take that veil off of yourself and admit all the things you've done. And that's a hard pill to swallow too.
It's a reactive abuse. Like what they do is they poke at you until you have this explosive moment, and it's oh, I hate it. I know that my abuser would do that and would just sit back with a smirk on his face and
Yeah.
say, "Look at you!
Yeah.
Wow, wow!
Yeah.
Look at that
Mm,
reaction! You're crazy."
yeah.
And then I would believe it. I would sit there and think, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just screamed like that," or whatever. And I actually probably am crazy. And I think
Hmm.
you kind of are. You've lost the semblance of who you are at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you will do anything to stop feeling the way that you're feeling, whether that is you're afraid of him leaving, whether that means Like, I just don't want to have to deal with the enormity of finding a job and moving out. And, they purposely set you up and they get you so ingrained in something that although it looks so easy for other people on the outside, like just leave, on the inside, you just, when I ended up getting divorced, I found several chairs that were stationed all around my house. And I would go outside on the front porch when I would get very upset because I didn't want the kids to see me cry. And I would just fall apart on the front porch, texting and crying and begging. And it wasn't until after he left that I noticed that he like skillfully placed chairs behind trees and behind the gate so that he could see me while I was falling apart because he gained so much pleasure from watching me so just bottomed out, distressed. And then it got to the point where he was taping me. He was videotaping me. He was taking the text messages that I was sending him and he was sending them out to his friends. So he was making this case that she's crazy, and I played right into it because, from the outside, I look crazy.
Hmm.
When I read through some of the texts that he was, giving to the court, I was like, what was I thinking? But in the moment, it literally feels like you're going to die if you do not make this work and you
Yeah.
do everything to stick with it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very terrible dynamic to be in. And again, I think these people are very masterful and they know
Hmm.
what will just like make you do whatever they want. And again, they don't come in saying, I'm going to hate your kids. I'm going to treat them, but you do know something's up because these people do not operate like everyone else. I think mine was that he never wanted to hear me talk about my first husband when everyone else was trying to get me to slow down, to grieve, to talk through it. I was like, nope, nope, nope. And I thought that him not wanting to hear about it was that, oh, like he's just trying to give me space, and it took me probably 2 years to recognize he really just didn't care. He didn't want to hear me. He didn't want my problems. He didn't want to shoulder any burdens. He literally was like, just don't talk. And then by the time I was ready to talk, it was pretty much no, don't you're stop being, he used to say, you can't control your emotions. You can't control your emotions. And I was like, I didn't realize that emotions were to be controlled. And I kind of do. I was like, if you knew what I'd like to be doing right now, I'm controlling them pretty well.
Yes. They have no idea the amount of
No.
control that we have.
Yes, I would agree with you there. Only during certain parts, and I think that that's a cycle of these things is that you feel so helpless and you're bottomed out and you're like, oh my gosh, I just can't do another moment. And right when you're about to leave, he would come back and he'd say stuff like, well, fine, if you really want if you really want to make it work, if you want, if you're going to keep begging me, even when I wasn't, he just knew that he was gotten to that point where I was going to walk and then he would just flip it around. And, it was like, I always say it was like someone was choking me out. And just as I was about to take my last breath, he would like let go. And it almost felt like he was the one saving me, which, the person that's literally trying to kill me turns himself into the savior, like within an hour of, this entire blow up fight. I'm thinking, I made this all up in my head. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's crazy literally to be in that and not be able to see it.
Yes, and I had a guest on, and I'm not going to make an assumption of narcissism going on, but because it is definitely an overused topic, but it sounds
It is. Yeah.
sounds pretty darn close. But she came on to talk about narcissistic personality disorder, and she said that it gets to a point where they do the breakdown, build you back up, breakdown, build you back up, but then the cycle you're so into the cycle where you're on the floor and they've broken you down, and then just the fact that they're not unleashing abuse actually seems like a gift at that
Uh-huh.
point. It's not even apologies anymore or anything like that. It's just the fact that you get to breathe for a second and you're like, oh, he's a good
I can
guy
do
because he's
this.
letting
Yeah.
me breathe. Yeah.
And I can do this. Yeah. See, I knew that I was looking at it wrong, but now that I see it can be fixed, I'm going to go right back into trying to fix it even more. Yeah. And that's the
Yes,
thing is like
exactly.
it becomes less and less about what's going on and more about the rapidity of the cycle, where it was this drawn out cycle It would be like 2 weeks of him not talking to me, and then he would kind of be nice to me, and I was like, oh, and then he would be nice to you for like a week, and then he would start all over again. Yeah, and it just becomes exhausting, and you don't even see it. You just kind of are in the motion of waiting for the uptick so that you can breathe again.
Absolutely. Oh, and then you see how kind they are to everyone else and how, even giving or helpful. And then you think it really actually must be me if he can act like that with everyone else and it's just me.
Yep. My car broke down, and I had my mother who's in her 80s. I had my daughter who was, be- you know, before 10 years old, and my son, and we were stuck in Atlanta, and I was driving his truck and it broke down, and he wouldn't come get us. Like he was like, just wait for it. It took us like 7 hours, and we were in a horrible part of town, and he would not come get us. But the very next day, his parents' car breaks down like 45 minutes from our house, and he's like out the door going to pick them up. And I'm thinking, and then he would say to me, well, if you didn't let the gas run down, that's you. Why am I going to clean up after your stupidity? And it was one of those like, but you're so willing to step in for everybody else. But when it comes to me, you're being ridiculous, calm down. You're being way too emotional. If you weren't so stupid, you wouldn't put yourself in this position. This is your fault. And you begin to believe it.
You mentioned also a financial component, and financial abuse is definitely a thing. I'm sure pretty much everybody can figure out what that means, but do you mind just sort of going into a little bit more detail what that looks like?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about like, yeah, sure, the house. A lot of people share a house, and if you're a stay-at-home mom, I wasn't. Technically, I worked still, but when you're sharing stuff with somebody, you don't even know how much they're taking care of until they start, taking back those things or not caring for them. So, we first moved here. All of a sudden, I was responsible for everything, and then the yard work because he didn't want to do that, and then this, and then that. And so I started seeing that I was so stuck in my house. I couldn't sell it because he was supposed to refinish it, but he didn't want to. He gave up. He wasn't contributing any money. So I can't sell my house because it's in ill repair, but I can't repair it because I don't have any money. And then the kids were on state aid because we had 6 kids, and that would be like $1,500, if not more a month. So the kids are on Medicaid. Well, he refused to hand in any of his IRS forms every year. So I would be on the phone, like fighting with people saying, like, I cannot, because my special needs daughter was one of those people on, and I was like, I cannot let this lapse. And I would just cry. And they were like, he has to get his stuff in. Well, of course, he didn't want to turn his stuff in because then I would know how much he was making. So, not only it was all of these things like, if you don't want to contribute, it's not okay, but I can do with that. But not only was he not contributing, he was actually messing things up on purpose. And then when I would call and I would cry and I would tell these people, like, I can't lose my medical, and he would hear me yelling at people, he'd be like, God, see how mean you are to people? Like, you think you own everyone. You think that you're so entitled. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just trying to save my kids' medical insurance, or I'm just trying to, save my daughter's disability. But he just had this way of throwing things in my path so that I would trip up no matter what that was. It took me years. I went through probably like 7 lawnmowers in my backyard. And I finally recognized that it was because he was taking bricks and he was throwing them down in different places so that when I cut the lawn, I would go over them and it would break the. I mean, that is the level of depravity that this man was capable of that I refused to see. I would make excuses for, oh, we probably did that because one of the dogs was, digging, or
Hmm.
I just refused to see how truly and, you know, to your talk of narcissism, I get very upset with my girls because, and boys, they're on social media and they're like, you're gaslighting me. And I'm like, girls, you don't even know what
Yes,
gaslighting
yes, yes,
is.
yes.
Like, yeah, I'm like, you are diluting how seriously dangerous these individuals are when you lump people and say, like, when you use it as such like a term, it loses its true toxicity. Like, it is a dangerous, dangerous relationship to get into somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder.
And it's not just a matter of somebody's trying to pull one over on you, and that's what gaslighting is. It's the manipulation and the complete, I mean, you have no idea what your reality is anymore, and you're so confused and you're so lost. It's dismissing, overreacting. I had that all the time. You're overreacting. You're so emotional. You need to pull
Yeah.
yourself together, kind of thing. Or, I was just kidding. I didn't really mean
Right.
that. I don't know why. I was just
Why are you
kidding.
so sensitive? You're so
Yes,
sensitive.
it was
Take a
just a
joke, can't
joke.
you?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Nobody else would have been so sensitive or just even denying things like that happened. I would never say that. Why would you think I would say something like that?
Yeah.
So,
I know.
yeah, it's a
Or making
horrible,
up
horrible
stuff
thing.
you said. And I'm like, I never
Yes.
said that. Yeah, you did. No, I really, and it doesn't even sound like something I would say. Well, you
Right.
don't even know what you say anymore because you just get so mad you can't handle your emotions and you just flip out. And I mean, yeah, I probably did several times, but when you don't understand the pressure that's coming on the other side of it, when I see someone behave or react now, I'm very quick to say, like, well, I wonder what pushed their buttons for them to do that. I think a lot of people are just so quick to say there's something wrong with them if they react that way. And not that we all should get a pass when we behave badly. That's a completely different subject, but narcissists definitely have a way of, I mean, they're very, very good at painting you to be something and then pushing your buttons to make sure that you show every aspect of what they're claiming you do. And they're also very good at accusing you of doing the very things they're doing, which confuses the heck out of me. Like,
Yes.
yeah, everything that he claimed when he came after me during the divorce, everything that he was claiming, I was like, that's you. He was saying that I was abusing dogs. I'm like, I would never abuse a dog. I mean, that's where I draw a line. Like, I would
Right.
never abuse a dog. Like, accuse me of a lot of stuff, but I would never abuse a dog.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and it is the thing that they know will also make you fall into line because they know you want people to see you as a good person. And they know that you care what people think, and that's what they use against you.
Well, how did you get out, actually?
So, as I said, I had four from the first marriage. He actually left one time, and he went to the lawyer, and he must have found out that he wasn't going to get anything. So, after about 6 months, came back, said, "Oh, I really want this to work." And from that point on, he started videotaping me, and like I said, sending my text out, messages out, set me up for stuff. Said like, "I need you to go see this psychologist because you're crazy, and if you do that." Um, so by the time finally, I think I kicked him out 3 or 4 times, but I kept letting him come back in. And at the very last time, my son, who is the third youngest, he said to me, Mom, I don't understand why you keep letting him come back. He said, he's threatened to kill you. He's threatened to kill me. I've lost my childhood over this. I don't leave my room. I'm afraid of him. And, in that very moment, I realized that if I couldn't get out of it for myself, I at least had to get out of it for my kids. And that was the end of it. That was the beginning of the end. But he came after me. He said I was, drug addict, an alcoholic, that I was bipolar personality, whatever it was. I was crazy, crazy, crazy. And luckily it was a battle, but the truth always does come out. But unfortunately, it takes you thousands of dollars, your reputation, and a whole lot of years off your life to get it
Oh,
where you want it.
yeah, and I know some people who have had to move just because but yeah, the smear campaign, because it got so bad that they couldn't stay in the same town they were living in because everybody's looking at her like she's the bad guy, and difficulty doing anything there. I mean, some people have a hard time finding a job because they believe all these lies that are told, and it's
Yeah.
like, again, when all these social media individuals are overusing the terms, it really minimizes the effect that it takes on people, and it literally destroys lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
um
there came a point where, and that's one of when people ask me for like, what's my biggest advice? I lost everything, and I hung on as long as I did because I was so afraid of what people were going to know, that people would know what went on in my house, that people were going to see that crazy text messages or that, somehow I was going to be at fault. And I think that the only way to get out of these relationships is for one to accept that, yes, you might lose everything. But I think that everything that I lost, I either didn't have to begin with, or it was the very thing keeping me stuck. When you talk about losing, people in your community, I lost all my childhood friends. I did move away from my home. And he was going back there and talk about a smear campaign, telling everyone I was crazy, sending my text messages, telling everyone I wouldn't let him see his kids. And the people that I grew up with that I had known my whole life, I can't say that they ever said anything to my face, but it was very quiet behind the scenes. And I didn't really even try and reach out when I left. That was it. I had to be okay with losing what I lost. And what I found out was that on the other side of it, I'm so sorry that it took me so long to do it, A. And B, there's nothing you can do to change what's happened. Whatever's happened has happened. You just need to move forward because you can't fix it. You can't change it. And the more you try, I always say it's like a sweater, like you pull on that string and all of a sudden there's no sweater left. You just keep pulling and pulling and pulling. And that's the way these relationships cannot in any way, shape, or form be healthy. I have, read, there's that back and forth. Can you be with a narcissist? Can you? In my own head, if you have to ask that question, that is someone that is not healthy for you because you shouldn't ever ask, can I be in a relationship with somebody that inherently says you're going to need to put out more than you should. I mean, why would you want to? Can you? I suppose anybody can. But is that what you want out of your life? And I can't imagine that anybody living in that kind of fear. It's a constant fear. It's a constant like fire drill, adrenaline. What's he doing now? What's he going to do? How's this going to come back on me? Because it's just a matter of time. It is. Um, so as hard as all of those things are, just remember that the only person you're responsible to is yourself. I would say your kids too, to a certain degree. But don't worry about what other people think or whether they're going to believe you or if they're going to think you're at fault. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Even if you are at fault, even if you are the narcissist, let's just say, case in point, fine, I will admit I'm a narcissist. I still got to walk away. I can't do
Mhm.
this anymore.
Right. Well, and I mean, you just kind of have to assume that you are going to walk out of the relationship without the having a relationship with other people that you did. You are going to lose people. Some people lose family members over
Yeah.
these relationships. But the important thing is that abuse is going to escalate. It's not going to get better. It's not going to ever go away. It's going to get worse. And you're going to lose more and more and more of yourself.
Yeah.
And I just can't stress it enough that the importance of leaving. We were talking about that. And
Yeah.
I mean, I will 100% be the first to say I did not leave when I should have. I stayed in a lot longer than I should have. And it escalated to a point where I think everyone does have, like you said, the beginning of the end. I had that
Yeah.
beginning of the end, but there was one night where it like my abuser turned physical. He wasn't really physical before that, and then he was very, very much aggressively physical that night. And that was my absolute breaking point. But like don't let it get to that. It's so hard to recover from the emotional trauma to begin with. And then when you add in the fact that like I couldn't forgive myself for letting it get that far, and I was taking responsibility for what he had done to me, and there's a lot of shame involved, and I get that, but that's not going to go away
Right.
until you get away.
Yeah, like I said, whatever's happened in the past, and I think that we all don't want to look stupid. I liken it to being like opening up an email where you click on the wrong button and all of a sudden your computer's just full of a virus, and you're
Yes.
like, oh my God, I've been warned never to click on a link. How could I have clicked on a link? That's how this whole thing lays out. Like, it, but you take a chance on it because you're a good person and you want things to work. But then once you click that link, you'll never get back to start. Like, you have to recover in my opinion, you have to let that laptop go and recognize that you're just going to start over with a new one and be smarter next time.
Yes.
We all make we all, it's so easy to, at the end to say that was a stupid mistake, but we make decisions that we do when we're presented with the information we have. And, if you made it, like, I never intentionally went into that relationship to hurt anyone, to, hurt my children, to embarrass myself, to, lose everything. And you just, if you went into it with the best intent, no matter how it works out, that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you any dumber than if it had worked. What if it had worked out? Well, that'd be great, but you don't know that until you give something a try. But certainly don't go down with the ship, which I think that song by Halsey, The Graveyard, was one of my, like, it was right in the smack of what I was doing. And I felt it. I was like, I'm going to die if I stay in this. Emotionally, I was pretty much already dead. But yeah, it does not get any, and the more you pull away, the more dangerous it becomes. And I remember my ex-husband saying we had gotten in a fight, and like I am the type of person where I did never have any fear of being physically hurt by him. And he said to me one time, "This is getting really dangerous." And I was like, "No, it's not." Like, dangerous is never something that would cause. But when I recognized that he was talking about himself and he was having very dangerous thoughts, he would pretend to choke me. And he'd say, "Oh, if I could just," and it does escalate. He said, whispered in my ear very calmly one night, "I'm going to kill you, and then I'm coming back for your son." Um, you know, and how far do you go with that? Because I was like, oh, he was just drinking. He was, but unfortunately, it only takes once for them to follow through. And, that's why I think it's such a tragedy that economic, financial, and emotional abuse are not recognized in the courts, because you're basically saying, oh, he's just really being mean to you. Everyone's mean. And it's something so much greater than that.
I completely agree. And you you you're doing what you can to help those. And I know you started talking about it at the beginning of the episode, but I'd love for you to go into more about the Colin James Barth. First of all, where'd the name come from?
So that's my first husband.
Okay, I
Um,
thought so.
Yeah, so when he got sick, our community was amazing. They came out and they helped with fundraisers and just did everything they could to, like, make sure that we were financially okay. And when he passed, after seeing everything he went through, I would go down with chemo with him on Thursdays, and I started writing Tatum's story, which is our special needs daughter, because it was like such an up and down, just crazy story. So I started writing her story on my BlackBerry, and I would email it back to myself, and then it kind of just flowed into his story. So I didn't really write it to release it to the world more. I did it because I thought my children would never meet him. But after he passed away, I just let it sit on my computer for 12 years. But I said to him, my biggest thing was always, Colin, something good has to come out of this, because as you said, pancreatic cancer. I remember when he was diagnosed, they said, well, if you're going to have one, that's the worst one to have, which, you know, I don't know why someone would say that to you, but anyway, but
It's
it
so
was right. And it
comforting.
was
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Yeah. So watching him suffer, and, I would just always say that, like, this, all the meaninglessness and all of this has to be meaningful. So after going through the divorce with my second husband and just like feeling so out of control of my children, the courts came in, suddenly I couldn't make decisions for my kids. I was being called, all of these names, and everywhere else when someone accuses you, it's, that you're innocent until proven guilty. And family court's the exact opposite. They can say whatever they want, and you have to prove that it's not the truth. So after going through that, and it was such a different feel between, falling as a mom with a special needs daughter and not being able to pay for those medications, or, taking caring of a husband. And when he got sick, my first husband, he was a trader, so he didn't have vacation. He didn't have sick pay. So we were on our own the minute that it happened. So my thought process after going through all of this, I'm a huge believer in the universe, and I think when bad things happen, we just kind of all want to get through it, put it in our past, and just move on and forget that it happened. But after the second go round, I recognized that I believe it's kind of our duty, if we go through something really horrible and found our way through it. I think it's kind of our duty to change whatever we can to make sure that the next person, it's a softer ride for them. And if they do it, And what a great world we'd have if everybody did that. So my association, the outreach, was named after Colin. And the whole premise is that when crisis hits, you don't even know what you need. After you find out what you need, you're dealing with children, household finances, So we try and come in as like a concierge service so that, we can tell you, oh, this person, you're eligible for this grant. You need education. So we kind of sit down with them. We figure out where we can help. We're building databases and networks so that we can match people with eligible things because everybody goes straight to the government, because it's like the biggest thing, like, oh, the government will help you, but unfortunately, they won't help you until you have nothing left and you have to lose everything. So, what we do is we try and take women where they're at, find lucrative opportunities for them, recognize that even though they haven't been in the workforce, my God, they have so much job. I mean, you're a counselor, a cook, you know, fundraiser for the school. You've done it all by the time you've raised your children. So, we try and get companies to recognize that. So we're just really built on the belief of, I want to help the Julie of me who had a special needs kid, whatever it is, you come to us, even if we don't have the resources at that point to help you, we will find whatever small little, because there is always a small organization that you qualify for, but it's like finding a needle in the haystack. So we're trying to cut through all that because I'm sure the people that are giving away grants would like to find the people that are eligible. And I think there's a disconnect because by the time you find it, you're either through the crisis or you've gone bankrupt and you're not in a position to even, take them up on whatever they are offering.
Right. So how far is your reach? Are you in a specific region, or how far do you go?
Right now, we're trying to test pilot really in South Carolina. That's where I'm located. If you come to us, if you go to my website, I am a huge research person. Like that's all I do. I believe in finding the wizard. That was always my thing. That like there's 1,000 really good doctors for primordial dwarfism, but there's that wizard that's going to take the time and is going to sit down with you. So I'm a big proponent of finding that little resource wherever it is for you. So if you reach out to me, that's kind of what we do is we find resources for you. Again, we're starting in South Carolina, building this database, and we'd like to extrapolate it to, the nation. But we are really in our infancy. So the most help that I've been able to give to people right now is they call me and just having a third party to be like, what should I do? I'm stuck in this situation. Just even, I think even if you just start taking steps, like you said, you have that aha moment, you have that, like, I can't do this anymore. The only way to get out of that is to make small steps in any way that you can to build power, to have like start feeling like you can do it. And once you feel like you can do it, opportunities open up a lot more. But sometimes I think it just takes one person to believe in you, to say you're right, to say you don't deserve this, and let's find a way for you to get out of it.
Okay, I love that. How do people get in touch with you?
So if you go to my website, which is juliebarthauthor.com, there's a tab for my daughter's art. My special needs daughter is a self-taught artist, so she sells her art, and the proceeds go to the CJB outreach. So on my website, you can read about me, my books, my podcasts, and then there's also a tab for the CJB outreach, which goes directly to our organization. So if you're looking to get involved, to make a donation, we'd love you to, help out. Even if you need our help, please do reach out. Again, I'm the only person manning it. So if nothing else, like I said, it's just nice to have someone on the other end saying, no, you're not crazy. Yes, you do need to get out. And we support you, whatever that looks like. We will be there. I was recently able to help like a 24-year-old girl. Husband had stolen her daughter and they were stuck, on a military base. And I am proud to say that she got her daughter back and she's at home. But had she not, within like a 3 week span, he would have taken her and she wouldn't have been able to get her daughter back. So, it's don't wait until it's too late to get
Hmm.
out. The damage is only going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, and I want to talk about that forever, but I want to talk about also your books and your podcast. So, what do you have?
I have Notes from a Blackberry. Like I said, that's the one that I wrote about Tatum and Colin, my first husband. I have From Blackberries to Thorns, which is going to be coming out this fall, which is the second marriage, getting out of that and everything that led up to that. And then I'll be releasing From Thorns to Blossoms, which is kind of unpacking everything. trying to put in some practical advice and just words of wisdom, and just trying to connect with the reader who's, if you've sought me out to get inside that piece of you that's ready to go, but you just need a little spark, or someone to lean on. Thinking a lot of these, you don't even want to talk about it. You're so tired of talking about it because you start out just kind of like almost being like any other significant other, complaining about your husband, or he's just, oh, he's always, and then all of a sudden the more it goes, the more you're like, I can't even tell people anymore, or I don't want to. People don't want to hear it, and they don't want to take up for him, or they don't want to push your buttons so much that you're going to start defending him, and then they've lost you. So they're trying to walk this fine balance too, where a lot of them tend to walk away because they don't know how to help you, but they're not walking away from you. I can guarantee you they're not walking away from you. It feels like they are, but if you are watching somebody hurt themselves over and over and are unable to stop the cycle, or be engaged in it, I think it's too hurtful. And I think that's why people walk, because they're like, I can't help her and I can't watch it either.
Oh, for sure. I had people that kind of disappeared in my life, and uh, I thought it was me because, of course, like everything was always my fault. But once I got out, they came back into my life and started explaining, listen, I couldn't be there because
Yeah.
of him. So, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and it becomes very, very isolating and lonely. And I always say, it's like when you break up with a boyfriend in high school and everyone's like, I hated that guy. You're like, why didn't you tell me that?
Oh
I
my
hated that
gosh.
guy
And I
too.
had so many people say that. I'm like, well, why didn't you say something?
I think that but I think that they felt you weren't ready to hear it either. And, it, I think it's easy on the outside. I do tend to, and I hate that I do this, but I felt like nobody put their line in the sand and said, listen, if you do not leave him, I have to step out. And this isn't about you. This is just, I can't be a party to it anymore, because that would have made a whole lot more sense. And it would have made me feel like it's not just me and I can salvage this relationship. The people that just walked away, it led me like, oh, I guess they just think I'm crazy. Do they? I don't know. I never asked. I just walked away. And but in the back of my head, I'm also thinking, if it were me and I lost one of my friends and I heard that they were, had gotten out, my first call would have been to them. But those are the people that do come back, and they will be there no matter what. And the other people, you just gotta let it go. They're not with you anyway. They're not your friends if they haven't given you the
Right.
space to speak, or if it's more uncomfortable for them to just walk away from a situation where they see you hurting yourself and feel like they can't do anything. Well, I mean, they probably could have, but it took a lot of energy. So, you know,
Yeah. And I mean, you can't really fault them. I mean, they have to look out for their own mental health too, because it takes a
exactly.
toll to see someone that they care about go through that kind of that level of abuse. Um, okay. Is there anything else? Did we miss anything
I think
to talk
so.
about? Okay. No, I love this conversation. Okay. So everything they can find, is it all on your website?
It
Like
is.
if,
It is. So
okay.
there's three different websites, but they're all linked to one another. So if you find one, you find the rest of them. All my social media links are on there as well. Um, I'm trying to get followers for my daughter's artwork, which is hopefortate.com,
I love
because
that.
the store won't show up until I have 500 followers. And I think I'm stuck at like 320.
Oh no.
So
Okay. We'll get
if you're
that. Let's
willing
get
to,
that.
you're willing to follow, that would help.
Okay. So it's Hope for
Yeah.
Tate.
Yes. With the
Okay.
number 4, TAYT.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I have that linked in to the show notes with us, but and I'm gonna push that. We'll we'll get that.
I'm
I love
terrible with
that.
social media. Yeah, I wish I were
Oh,
better.
so am I.
So terrible. Yeah.
I was talking to oh my gosh, she's probably in her mid-20s now. And I said, I need help with social media. And she's like, I don't really do it either. And I'm like, come on, I
You're
don't do it.
20. You have
I
to.
know, I thought that was a thing.
Yeah, I think even the 20-year-olds are starting to just not like it
Yes.
as much, which
Uh,
I think is hopeful for the world. Let's
yeah,
be
I
honest about it.
agree. I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm clueless, and I ask my friends, but we're all in our 40s, and they're like, we don't care. We
Yeah.
don't
No,
pay any attention to
I can
that.
hand it to my teenager and be like, can you do this for me,
Yes,
please?
that's
Yeah.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect. But okay, yeah, I will have all those links in the show notes, and we are going to we're gonna do that. Hope for
Good.
Tate. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
I
Thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate it. I know it's hard to talk about this stuff, but I think it's so important. I think it helps. I said this in a recent episode. I think it helps release shame that other people who have gone through it might be feeling. And
Yeah.
to hear, well, Julie's talking about it. Julie went through it, the same thing. So maybe it's not your shame to carry. And I
No,
think
it's
that
definitely not.
this will be super impactful, as well as all of your advocacy work. So I really appreciate everything you're doing and your time for coming on and talking with me today.
I appreciate you having me. Yeah, I think that if we could all just, say what we've been through, then there's a lot less shame in knowing that everybody goes through hard times. It's when you keep it hidden, that's when you feel shame for it. So, yeah, if you make a mistake, own up to it, put it in your past, and
Mhm.
make it easier for other people.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again, Julie, and thank you, Warriors, for listening. You can find the links Julie was referring to, including her 1 in 3 profile, in the show notes. Let's not forget about Tatum's artwork. Make sure to check out her website, hopefortate.com. That's HOP, the number 4, TAYT.com. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong. And wherever you are in your journey, always remember you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1 in 3 Podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.